We are taking you right now live to Palm Beach, Florida, where former President Donald Trump is speaking following the Supreme Court's ruling this morning that will prevent the removal of his name from the primary ballots. Let's listen.
It's the leading candidate, whether it was the leading candidate or a candidate that was well down on the totem pole. You cannot take somebody out of a race. The voters can take the person out of the race very quickly, but a court shouldn't be doing that, and the Supreme Court saw that very well. And I really do believe that will be a unifying factor, because while most states were thrilled to have me, there were some that didn't, and they didn't want that for political reasons. They didn't want that because of poll numbers, because the poll numbers are very good. We're beating President Biden in almost every poll. New York Times came out yesterday with a very big poll for us. So they didn't like that, and you can't do that. You can't do what they tried to do. And hopefully Colorado, as an example, will unify. I know there's tremendous support. They brought our support up very strong in Colorado, because people in Colorado thought that was a terrible thing that they did. And while we're on the subject, and another thing that will be coming up very soon will be immunity for a president, and not immunity for me, but for any president. If a president doesn't have full immunity, you really don't have a president, because nobody that is serving in that office will have the courage to make, in many cases, what would be the right decision, or it could be the wrong decision. It could be, in some cases, the wrong decision, but they have to make decisions, and they have to make them free of all terror that can be rained upon them when they leave office, or even before they leave office. And some decisions are very tough. I can tell you that as a president, that some decisions to make are very tough. I took out ISIS, and I took out some very big people from the standpoint of a different part of the world. Two of the leading terrorists, probably the two leading terrorists ever that we've ever seen in this world. And those are big decisions. I don't want to be prosecuted for it. Another president wouldn't want to be prosecuted for it. It had a tremendously positive impact. It stopped everything cold. And sometimes you have to make, they were tough decisions. Sometimes you have to make decisions like that. When you make a decision, you don't want to have your opposing party or opponent, or even somebody that just thinks you're wrong, bring a criminal suit against you, or any kind of a suit when you leave office. I have that right now at a level that nobody's ever seen before. I have rogue prosecutors, and I have rogue judges. I have judges that are out of control. And it's a very unfair thing for me, but serving perhaps as a sample to others of what should not be happening when you make good decisions. And in my case, the economy was great. We didn't go into any wars. We totally defeated ISIS. We provided the largest tax cuts in history. We provided the largest regulation cuts in history. But think of it, no wars. We beat ISIS 100% of the caliphate. And there were no wars. We did a job that was great, but maybe I wouldn't have done that. The caliphate, defeating them, was very powerful. It was going to take 4 years. It took me 4 months. But it was a very strong dictum that I gave. I said, get them, defeat them, end it. We were fighting for 20 years against ISIS, and we did it very quickly. I don't want to be prosecuted. In that case, it worked out very well. There will be some things that perhaps don't work out so well.
You have been listening to Donald Trump speak following the Supreme Court ruling this morning that he cannot be disqualified from the ballot in Colorado's Republican primary, or other ballots for that matter. Trump talked about the next Supreme Court cases involving him, saying that if you don't have full immunity, you won't have any president. To break this all down and hopefully interpret it for us is CBS News Chief Washington Correspondent Major Garrett, back here in Studio 57. Major, did I just hear the former president saying that if you're not allowed to break the law, you can't really govern? And is that the point he's making?
He was the point he was making, the precise point he's making. And it's the representations made to the Supreme Court and to the lower courts. A district court in Washington, D.C. rejected that argument. A 3-judge panel of appellate court judges rejected that summarily. And the Supreme Court probably will reject it as well, because it doesn't fit with any understanding of the presidency or American history or the law in our country. And the former president was making the argument that some decisions as president are tough.
Yeah.
That is undeniably true. I've been covering the American presidency since I started covering Bill Clinton in 2000. There are tough decisions that come to every president's desk. Making them doesn't expose you to criminal liability. Taking out ISIS on behalf of the national security interests of the United States government is not a legally prosecutable decision. It isn't.
Right.
Full stop. You have powers invested in you as the president by the Constitution and laws of Congress that allow you to do that. What we are entering into now is a conversation nationally about what if you're a sitting president and your attorney general says the election that you lost wasn't stolen from you? All your campaign lawyers tell you the election wasn't stolen from you. All your campaign advisors tell you the election wasn't stolen from you. And we have testimony that's not challenged on any basis from all of those people. Yeah. And you still try to use illegal means to stay in power. Is that a prosecutable crime? That's the question we're trying to resolve. It's not tough decisions presidents make. Former President Trump has also said, well, Harry Truman used nuclear weapons, the atomic bomb, to end World War II. Not a prosecutable decision. Yeah. It just isn't. And one thing he's kind of projecting is, well, somebody who doesn't like you might try to prosecute you. That's
the other message he's sending. I think the other thing here is he is stretching or extending this notion that he keeps using, that every case against him is just politically motivated. Right. He's undermining the legal system in that way.
Saying that any future occupant of the presidency either would use the political prerogatives of the presidency to prosecute someone or have them used against you. And that's simply not our history. And it also absolves him of any responsibility for actions he undertook. And there's a documents case, a classified documents case, and a January 6th case. Grand jury's indicted him for both. He'll have his due process rights, and he can have those cases heard and judged. But grand jury's indicted him, a former sitting president, knowing the gravity of that situation. So he's saying all the rules that we understood before aren't sufficient. Because when I came along, look what happened to me. I'm an example. I'm a test case of what can happen to you, not, well, there were boundaries and guardrails, and you crossed over them. Right. Which is essentially, Lilia, the underlying sort of rhythm or backbeat of this 2024 election. If there is a low-level melody that will never stop playing, we'll have inflation, we'll have immigration, we'll have other things. It's what are our sense of norms? What are our constitutional values? What are our legal approaches to resolving them?
And how much do voters care?
And how much do voters care?
Do
exactly. Well, we'll find out.
We'll find out in November.
Yes, indeed.
Major Garrett, thank you so much.
Thanks.